uh, from Oxidius. It's a startup, probably started last year, and they would be speaking on the topic AI in healthcare. I invite them for the talk. And before they start, I think I should tell why you have named it Oxidius, because I looked up in the internet, I couldn't find the meaning of it. So probably there must be some interesting story behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Firstly, I would like to start by thanking Dr. Dinesh Garu, who comes from the ethical committee, who has introduced us to this forum. And I would like to thank Dr. Shashikala Madam that she has seen some kind of potential in our product, in our company, what we are doing, and believed that we are eligible to present in such a good forum. We have worked with many multinational hospitals before, and I should definitely say that we have never heard of this kind of a joint event where doctors and researchers come together, exchange thoughts, learn together, and then build something for a better future. So I would like to start by appreciating that. It's a commendable thing that AIG is doing, and it's our honor to speak in this kind of a forum. Um, so by what Dr. Ravikant Garu has introduced and shown the curiosity to understand behind what Oxidius means, sir, I should say that you have taken the name very correctly. It is very rare that people pronounce it right. Oxidius is basically a short form that we have come up with, which is Augmented Clinical Decision Support System. So that's how we have coined Oxidius. We believe a lot that whatever technological advancements are happening today, all of them have to work towards augmentation of what is already there. It is not replacement of anything that's happening in the world. It's basically augmentation. So that's how, as a startup, we believe that we want to augment using the technology and then benefit the healthcare system. That's why we have come up with this startup called Oxidius. My name is Dr. Akhila. I'm the co-founder for Oxidius. I have two of my other co-founding members here, Dr. Meghnad and Mr. Kushal. Dr. Meghnad would be co-presenting with me on today's topic. So let's delve right into it. I believe that the topic might be a little intriguing. Yes? No? Doctors as co-creators building AI solutions together for healthcare. Okay, I take silence as an agreement. So this is the agenda that we would be discussing on. The problem that we want to discuss in today's meeting, and I say discuss because this is not going to be just a presentation. We would want some kind of an exchange of thoughts that is happening, through all this forum. So we would be discussing on research to practice gap, the solution that we believe in, human-driven and AI-powered, coherent relationship framework that we have come up with, the execution roadmap for building the future together, the future of healthcare together, and different players of the platform. What are the roles that they all would be serving, and what would be the benefits that everyone gets? So I would like to, give some difficulty for all of you by requesting all of you to kindly scan this QR code. There is one small question that we would want you all to answer. Sorry for the trouble. Could you all just scan this QR code? That will take you to a link. If you click on the link, it will ask you a question. We would want all your answers there. Can anyone confirm if you are able to see the question? Yes, thank you. We believe that we are extremely courageous that we are asking researchers this question. Okay, this slide shows the results. So I hope everyone has answered. Okay. So for a few, it might be interesting to note the number of years that it takes for a research to come into clinical practice. We have asked the same question to few of the clinicians that we have worked with. Surprising answer was clinicians thought that it would take a lot of time, but they believed that that lot of time is 1 year for the research to come into implementation. So there is as you can see here, there is varied opinion in terms of, the belief, the perception that everyone has on the time it takes from research to um, implementation of the observations. So basically, that is the biggest problem that we are seeing. And this is the problem that we are interested in discussing. So this is global statistics. As you all would, I'm sure, agree with me when I say that it is very difficult to find such statistics for Indian, geography, right? There is very less visibility on exclusive Indian statistics that is there today. So most of the time what we do as researchers is take the global statistics and add our observations on top of it and then, submit our results. There is a small gap, right? So again, I will be a little more courageous and then just mention about what is the current process that it takes from research phase to implementation. So there is research phase where there is analysis, clinical trials, validation. There is evidence generation, that is consolidation of all the research observations and generating the evidence, which is followed by formation of guidelines from the research observations. uh, these guidelines depend on the different bodies that give the release the guidelines, and that is adapted by the clinician community. Then comes the distribution, dissemination of the knowledge that happens, and then comes the evidence-based guidelines or protocols following by the clinician community. So we would like to call it as a cycle. But is the cycle complete? Are we actually seeing the research observations coming into clinical practice of every observation, every research that is being made with a lot of sweat, effort that is happening? Are all those coming into implementation? The research to practice phase is one side of the story, and the practice which is going into further advancement of the research through the feedback, through the review systems, that is the other side of the story. So as you can see, we call that as a blurred line that is currently there. So the loop closure is not happening very completely. The real world feedback after implementation that is happening, how different patients are responding towards different protocols, different treatment, different management patterns, this is not coming into further knowledge of the researchers so that there is further advancement. I do not say that it is not happening at all, but it is happening in a broken way. There is a lot of silos developments that are happening that are not going into a platform where there is complete visibility and the cycle completion that is happening there. So these are the challenges that we have understood by our research and by discussing with few of the clinicians and few of the researchers that we have interacted with. Clinicians believe that they do not have the resources. They are not given as much of funds as the researchers would get. I'm sure all the researchers would disagree on that, that there is a lot of funding challenge that the researchers face also. And the biggest challenge is clinicians lack time to actually take the patient observations, put it into a system which can bring out the meaning of it, give a give it a structure, try to derive the statistics of that, and then ultimately publish it. It takes a lot of effort, and frankly, trust me, as a clinician, I would myself tell that it is very difficult. The terminology, PubMed database, Cochrane, there are so many databases, and God knows how to find the relevant, citation from that. Because, it itself seems like a jargon how we can find the exact research paper. And majority of the clinicians struggle in finding the right reference, and that they can implement directly. There is also accessibility challenge, as most of the research papers are paid, and the accessibility in terms of where to find what is very difficult. And ultimately there is a little bit of resistance as well in terms of how to actually take the benefit from whatever is being published. So Dr. Meghnad would take it from here.
Yeah, very good afternoon to everyone. I think we'll continue the interactive part as is. And as Dr. Akila has discussed, there are many challenges that are causing this current gap that we discussed about. We would want to understand your perspective on what do you think are the main challenges. I would like to request you to scan the QR code again, or just refresh what you have already opened. If there is any difficulty, just call us out. So on the screen, you would be getting the options where you can drag and drop them and just rank them in terms of how it is important, what is the most important challenge, what is the next most important challenge, and so on. Yeah, I think the answers are. I think lack of time and lack of funds are going head to head. Very much relatable. So lack of incentive is definitely a challenge that we were thinking is something that has to be solved at a regulatory level. It's good to see that it is also actually on the top three most important challenges that have to be dealt with to address this gap. So time is currently the most valuable asset. I think most of us would agree that, like Dr. Clay was just mentioning, in terms of if you have to, take out time to start from taking your hypothesis, having all of the validations done, peer reviews, and everything takes time. So when you take that into consideration, whatever you're seeing on screen, I think is very much valid. If everybody is done, we would want to move forward. Is that okay, or is someone still trying to submit it? Just raise your hands. Okay, then good. So when we talk about the problem, I think we have established that it is the time that is taking for the research to come into actual clinical practice. Now, what would be the ideal solution for this? The solution might not be readily available. The solution might not be something that is very handy and available on the market right now. And it might be a hypothesis. This discussion is more to understand your perspective on how can we take this solution forward? What might be the different approaches we might need to take to implement this on field? So the solution actually roots into one more a very key data point that we have found in some of the research papers, where it actually says that the 17 years that we spoke about, that is just for 14% of research to actually see the light of the day. Meaning 86% of the research is still left as a research paper, or that is being accessed by many people, but we don't know who is accessing it, if they're actually practicing it, if it is being implemented, if there is any feedback that they would want to convey it back to the researchers. There is no loop closure of that. So the 14% is the only accountable research that people can say is being used as of now. But in the same paper, there is a very good hypothesis that has been stated with a good methodology that says if we are able to focus on just the distribution and the implementation piece of it, and streamline the accessibility of the research papers to different doctors in way where they can directly use it, you can reduce this time to 3 to 5 years. So 17 is what it is. We can reduce it to 3 to 5 years, and not just for some of the 14 or 20% of research, but the 80% of research that is there. So when we say 80% of the research, we don't mean like taking everything that is being published and using it right away. When we put out an hypothesis, or when you put out a study, when you have put numbers to it, when you have validated your hypothesis or disproved your own hypothesis, there needs to be a system where somebody is able to take that into practical account and give you the feedback, right? So how do you do this is what our purview on the solution is that we all know AI is picking up big time, right? So out of every innovation that comes out in the recent 1 year, at least 90% are just related to AI. There is a certain amount of bloat to it. There is a certain amount of just hype cycle to it. But once you clear out all the clouds, once the dust settles down, definitely there is promise that is involved with how AI can be used, right? In further slides, we'll discuss why is AI important. At the same time, why keeping the human in loop, why keeping the scientists or the researchers, the practitioners in loop is much more important than just advancing the AI as is. So, okay, AI is good, it is powerful and all that stuff. Okay, but how is it helpful, or how would it be helpful in research or fast tracking this time? That's the main thing that we would want to discuss here, right? So our hypothesis is that when we talk about research, one of the key aspects is data. Agreed? One of the key aspects that you need is, for especially some things like observational research or non-interventional research, data is itself the most important key factor. Now add that to the equation of AI. AI again feeds off data. How do you have a parallel system where the data that is coming out of research is going back to an AI model, and the same AI model is being used by clinicians in their particular practice, or in their care plans, or in their care pathways, and establish this loop using as AI models as a medium, right? So I would want to take a step back here just to give you what do we mean by AI models as a platform. In 1900s, when Gutenberg first invented the printing press, okay, that became the medium for knowledge translation. Everybody was woken by this enormous amount of information that was coming on printed paper. Let it be newspapers, let it be books. It took the world by a storm. Okay. Fast forward 100 or 200 years, there comes the internet. Okay. After that, there was another blast of information overload onto people. Everybody has access to internet, and slowly the access grew over time. Now we are in the third phase of information dissemination, and that is supposed to happen through properly regulated, transparent AI models. The reason why we are saying this is internet has reached this limit. Okay. The best example for you is, as you're all from the clinical background, you go and search for anything, Google first response, you have cancer, go and get it checked. Agreed? Everybody, I think, has faced this. Everybody has come across people who try to mention that. I think I have this, I think I have aneurysm. Just for headache, they will say I have brain aneurysm, I guess Google says that. Okay. The problem there is not the availability of information, but the problem there is finding the right answer to the right question. Now, internet itself has reached the limit in terms of how much information can it process and give it to people. That's where the new era begins, right? So where we have proper AI models, and that's what we want to establish. On top of these models, we want to give tools to people like you, who have like so much of dedication to make this forward. Any research, right? The ultimate zest of it, the ultimate passion that is leading you is the progress of humankind. Agreed? So how do you make it easier for you? So that's where the platform comes into picture. How do you have a dissemination or a distribution media that becomes the AI models? To keep this in complete check, that's where we need to co-create. And I'll take up more examples on how that is important in the further slides. So yeah, we were talking about artificial intelligence, right? So there are many things that if you take a track of, when we say production and consumption, we purely mean it in the language of research production or research genesis or doing research, and consumption being the practice piece of it. Even during the research, there are a lot of things that AI can do that can, make your life simpler, make your life easier, get more impact out of less time. Okay, and that involves, let it be simulations. I think bibliography is one of the biggest challenges that any research person has, right? Challenges in the sense the amount of time it takes to just find those references, quote those references, have that in your research papers, double check it, recheck it if you are missing something. Okay, so AI is definitely capable of streamlining that aspect of it. Even during the consumption side, it is very easy in terms of the practitioners using the research that is coming out and implementing it in their day-to-day practice. Now, okay, we are using all hype words. We are saying AI, we are saying platform, we are saying it is going to change the world. But how is it actually benefiting the stakeholders? How is it actually benefiting the people who are coming onto the platform? Let it be researchers or practitioners. Okay, the first and foremost is, I think there are a lot of barriers to clinical research. That means somebody has to has an idea, has an hypothesis. For them to get started, currently it's a nightmare, at least as far as what we have understood from some of the researchers that we have interviewed. Okay, so how do you get that down? This platform will be very useful there. Okay, and now research has been done. Okay, a lot of bodies exist that act on mostly on a reactive kind of a format because there is a lot at hand that is to be understood. But what usually happens is, best example is COVID-19, right? I think for the next 10 years also we'll still keep taking example of COVID. But there are some of the good lessons that we have learned. It was a very painful and pathetic phase, no doubt about it. But one thing was, you should have seen the whole fast tracking of how fast research was getting into practice. Okay, it was not done in the right way. I'm not saying that's how we should do it for rest of our life, but it showed us the glimpse of what is actually possible on that scale. Okay, how fast research papers were getting converted into guidelines, how fast these guidelines were searched and being implemented by doctors, and we might have not got the feedback loop in terms of was actually remdesivir that useful that it was quoted, but still there is good research, good outcomes, and some great lessons to take from it. And ultimately, the younger generations, the people who are just getting into research or just getting into practice, they need to be benefited from all of this. Yeah, so I'll again go back. I know it is a little bit of a challenge, but this is just to this is after lunch session. So just to keep it interactive and a little fun. I think you can refresh the same page. If it is not working, let me just put the QR code on screen. So this is more about what should be the role of the clinical experts, right? Now, lot of technology companies, lot of AI companies, they just use their technical prowess or technological prowess to go on building models. They say it can replace doctors, it can it does 90% more effective work than doctors and this and that. But lot of it is just marketing hype. We know that the companies who use doctors or who use proper clinical experts or researchers on their team to get their models on place are way better, way sustainable, way accurate than people who don't rely on clinical expertise to build health related technologies. Okay, very interesting. I'll just remove this for now. Yeah. Validation, I think, very, very important. Even that basic thing is currently not very much streamlined or not is much in practice as of today. I'm happy that nobody is saying we should just observe or oppose. That is zero. Don't vote on it just to prove me wrong now. Really wonderful. I'll just wait 10 more seconds if somebody is completing their voting. I think because we put the title as co-creating, a lot of people are voting for co-creating. Hope it's not. Yeah. Is everybody done? Do I wait for 5 or 10 more seconds? Okay. Yeah, it's really good to see that co-creation got the most number of votes. I would just get to why we feel that is also that is like the most important way or most validated way to go forward with how do we approach building healthcare AI models. Okay. So at the base of everything that we are talking about, right? We see many companies now it has become a very common thing. WhatsApp powered by AI. Tomorrow we will get even like milk powered by AI. We'll get water powered by AI. We are bound for that future. We definitely know that is going to happen. But what we want to achieve from co-creation, this is like the single bullet statement that we want to echo across all of the healthcare realm is that the future of healthcare has to be powered by human beings, not AI. Okay, so it can be AI can be used to facilitate or help these human beings, but ultimately it is the job of human beings to heal. AI can never take that place. For something else, we can say, okay, driverless cars, I think 10 years will be there. Okay, robots roaming around home and washing your dishes, okay, perfect, no problem, it will happen in 20 years. But AI coming and taking the place of clinicians, clinical experts, I don't think that future will never happen. Even if it is bound to happen, we should be there to stop it. That's not good for any one of us. But still, to clear out the doubts, I think why it is very important for co-creation. Like I was saying, the advent of AI or the AI coming into picture is inevitable. We cannot stop it. Okay, because a lot of bureaucrats believe in it, a lot of technology companies believe in it, people who drive the non-clinical side of it completely believe in it. And it's nothing wrong to say that it is actually powerful. It is powerful. But when you know that the train has already started, better to get on it and take the steering wheel than trying to stand on the platform and yell at it, right? So that's the differentiation that has to be created from this co-creation. But like I was saying, for people who think, okay, I can replace doctors, I have AI that can read the radiology reports faster than doctors and so on, we should still convey the message very clear. Why clinicians? To heal, as I said, is human. AI, a robot, a machine can never heal like human beings do. Okay, the dense clinical practice, that means the years and years of different practice that is coming into picture, these so many cases that doctors or clinicians see and how they are able to relate so many different data points and have that intuitive judgment, right? That I think cannot be created through AI. And why still AI is necessary? Why should we not do it on our own? I think there are some things that it can do that can benefit us. One thing is the amount of, when we talk about research or anything, as we ironed out that data is at the core of it. The processing speed or the amounts of data AI can process in a millisecond, it is not actually practically possible by human beings. So we should use that to our advantage. Okay, and the ability to understand what are the different disease presentation patterns or treatment management compliance patterns or efficacy patterns, it can do it much faster. and give us the inputs that can be done. Okay. And I think most importantly, AIs don't need to sleep, they don't need to eat. They are drinking lots of water. That's a fact. I think a lot of people know that one chat GPT 4 query, I think, drinks 100 or 1000 liters of water, something like that. So, but they can still work 24/7. It is going to get cheaper, it is going to become more accessible, and the amount of work it can do in the same 24 hours compared to a human being is much greater. Okay, so how do you think this co-creation can happen, or how do you suggest that this can be taken forward? We try to put it in a very simple cyclical process. That means right starting from if you think about how the clinical expertise gets generated, right? What is clinical expertise? When something is done, you have the ability to look at the response to it. You have the ability to see that and say, okay, this is working, this is not working, and take that as a feedback for the next patient that you treat. You do that for a period of time, you are expert at what you do. That's not just clinical expertise, that's with anything. You respond to feedback and you evolve. That's where the genesis of expertise happens. Okay. Now, we want the expertise genesis happening and to be pushed back to the AI platform, which will again push forward the generation of the clinical guidelines, which will again push it back to doctors who are practicing and using models in their day-to-day practice, and they have the orientation of how to track outcomes. As simple as some drug has been given, there was an unexpected side effect. That one single data point is still very key for understanding what could have gone wrong and what can be corrected. Okay, so just the exchange of data at these 5 different steps back to the platform, the to and fro communication that can happen, can itself lead to the co-creation, or can itself lead to the models getting better and the all of the stakeholders getting benefited from that. So just to give you an idea, in terms of what kind of when we say AI models, again, it is a very widely, very vaguely used term. We want to be very precise on what do we mean by what models. Okay, so when we say interventional research and observational research, I think interventional research where trials are required. I don't think we are there yet where we can directly hand over all of the data to a AI model and say this is good to go. There is a lot of manual intervention still that would be required. It would change over time as again the models keep getting better. But we would want to focus on the observational research related things where the current existent models, that it be the large language models that power the GPT or chat GPT, or the deep neural networks that power everything from how you see ads, your Netflix recommendations, your Facebook friend recommendations, your LinkedIn connection recommendations. All of these work on those deep neural networks. The same kind of models can be implemented in understanding what will be the epidemiological patterns where there is certain incidence high, where there is a prevalence that cannot be brought down, and all of those patterns. And ultimately, when you do cross-sectional meta-analytic studies, take few research analogies or research hypothesis and try to understand what is it conveying on a bigger picture. So there again, you have something like a Google network that runs behind Google search that can make sense of all of this information. So as I was saying, observational research is something that can be completely, all of the models involved in observational research can be completely co-created as of now, end to end, and it can be plugged in into daily practice. Okay, sorry again, but let's go to the next question. So this is about when we have spoken about the framework. Okay, we want to put it in a phase-wise manner because any operational thing we cannot chunk up everything at once. So what do you think is like the first and major step that is required in the execution of this framework? How do you how would you want to prioritize that? Would you want to solve distribution first? Would you want to solve the implementation first? There is a lot of awareness in terms of how to use research and all. I think somebody agrees with me on that. So would we solve that first? And just let us know your opinion.
This, I think, also brings into the picture the question of who should be the stakeholder who should work harder and faster in the journey. We are finding it difficult to choose which should be the first step. Shall we begin? I think all the answers are correct, definitely. It has to start somewhere. We will be demonstrating what we believe can be the first best step in this execution. So the first phase that we believe is removing resistance in adoption of any evidence-based practices that comes in. Unfortunately, today, most of them believe that we are following evidence-based practice. Just because it is, on top of our memory, we believe that we are following evidence-based practice. Just because a lot of people endorse this particular treatment, a lot of patients have not turned up back to you, to the clinician, after giving particular medication, it cannot be the evidence-based practice then, right? You know the patient's behavior, they usually window shop. If the condition is not treated, even if they do not complete the course of antibiotic that's prescribed by the clinician, on the second day itself, they will go to another clinician, they will take a higher antibiotic, or they can even get a dose of nice steroid from an RMP practitioner and then feel very comfortable in their health, right? There is resistance. There is resistance in terms of adoption of technology, following the practices, behavioral change, and also in sharing the information. The second in the sequence of consumption of research is establishing outcome tracking and impact measurement cycle. Today, I have treated 20 patients of so-and-so condition. How many of the patients have felt really relief after this particular medication? I have read this particular journal that this particular treatment is recommended for this group of disease, and I started implementing it. How many of them have really seen a difference? Are there any side effects or are there any complications that are coming in that the patient is facing that is affecting me, that is affecting in proper usage, proper management of that particular condition? That particular measurement, unfortunately, is not happening. We have worked with a lot of hospitals, we have interviewed a lot of hospitals. Unfortunately, what we have found is there is a feedback form, at the time of discharge or after the consultation, which gathers the details of how is the patient's experience with the administration, with the waiting time, with how well the phlebotomist has punctured his vein and collected the blood. There is seldom the measurement of the outcome and the experience that the patient has with respect to their disease. So that's second most important step that needs to be addressed. The third step is enabling simplified means of continuous medical education. Now, this is very interesting. I have asked a general physician this question of the importance of continuous medical education. they have answered me that I need to renew my certificate. That's the reason that continuous medical education is required. Another physician has mentioned that the MRs that come in endorsing a particular drug for a particular disease request us to talk about this particular condition and how this medicine can help. That is when the certain event or certain conference like this is set up and a talk happens on that disease and how the drug helps them. And that is how the importance is being perceived. What if the MR is not coming into existence? Will the continuous medical education not happen? What if the credit system is not endorsed by the doctors? Will we not continue to educate ourselves? We will do, right? And we should do, because there is a lot of advancement happening in the world, every country, every nook and corner, and there is a lot of things that we can learn from everywhere in terms of our day-to-day practices. Accessibility of data products for continued research. Now, I would like a little attention from all of you on data products. I'm sure all of you believe that there is a lot of data that you generate every day, right? And whenever we talk about data and data analysis, most of the most frequent response that we get is when people say that, yes, we have a lot of data. Are you trying to steal the data from us? And data is a very personal thing. Data is very sensitive. It's a confidential information. We are not allowed to share data of the patient. Now, there is a lot of difference between data and data product. Data is just, the demographic details, just the age, just the, the type of diagnosis that is made, the symptoms, the medicines that are prescribed, and, XYZ. But what is a data product? Something that makes sense. A data that can be consumed, interpreted, and understood. That it has to go through a very difficult process of removing of unnecessary elements from that, cleaning of the data, what we call, structure it properly, find correlations and associations, bring out the true meaning of the data, and ultimately make it ready for consumption. That is what is data product. Okay, so this is the vast difference, and accessibility of these data products, unfortunately, for continued research is something that needs to be solved next. Then provide reliable tools for every clinician for converting research into guidelines. Now, every clinician finds some case series on a particular case, understanding of all that. Making a sense out of that, they need certain tools. As I mentioned earlier, one of the clinician mentioned that we cannot publish a lot of papers because we are not statisticians, we are not public health experts, and we would need assistance from all of them. And unfortunately, in India, we do not, find such kind of assistance very easily, nor it is cheap. It is costly. It is a personal interest of a clinician to, hire a statistician and publish papers. So what are these reliable tools for every clinician? I'll tell you a scary story that we have heard from one of the clinician. He's a super specialist from a very reputed medical institution, who mentioned that he takes in all the patients' reports, the lab reports and the discharge summary and all these things. And all of you know ChatGPT and Gemini, right? This particular doctor believes that by feeding these reports into ChatGPT, it is helping him understand and making the better sense out of this entire, the data from these reports, and helping him in publishing the papers easier. Now, is it the right way? That's a confidentiality breach, that's a data privacy breach, and that is very risky because, as we know, there are a lot of tools that are not advanced in such a way that it can understand and make sense of the medical information as is. That you all must have heard of the term called hallucination. ChatGPT hallucinates. It gives some kind of a reading, some kind of an inference from the papers that actually is not the case, right? So the right reliable tools have to be provided. Enable real-time feedback and efficacy based on based autonomous learning. Now, from all the data, all the structuring, all the information that we have gathered, understanding and giving the real-time feedback is the next step. Now, most important thing, as we all believe, whenever the term AI is used, would come the question of reliability. Yes, we believe that these are the three key principles that needs to be, key design principles that needs to be followed by any health tech company or an organization, however big it is: transparency, reliability, and accessibility. These are the driving principles when it comes to any framework. It need not be the framework that we have come up with. Any framework, there has to be a transparency to an extent that it can, give credit to the person who has done all the research. Right? It has to give credit to a clinician if he has given certain observations by treating all, thousands of his patients on this. There has to be reliability. There should definitely not be any hallucinations, and there should definitely be not be any, any creation that is happening automatically by the AI, which is not coming directly from the system. So there has to be limitations and restrictions that are put in for the AI system. And accessibility, the tools and frameworks accessibility to all the key players. I believe this is the last QR scan that everyone has to do. May I please request all of you to scan? Interesting. We have mostly researchers here, and you don't believe that you can benefit with the solution. Thank you. Ten more seconds. Great. So we are talking about four key players, four key stakeholders in this ecosystem: the health tech companies, the clinical practitioners, the clinical researchers, and pharmaceutical and medtech players. All four of them have a role to play definitely in this, building this entire ecosystem. What should the health tech players like us and like Google, Apple, and the big tech giants should do? They have to build. They have to build reliable solutions. It has to be accessible. It has to be affordable, and it has to actually make sense by understanding the real problems that the other key players in this ecosystem are facing. What should the clinical practitioners do? They have to adapt to the technology, the digitization, analyze what is happening, analyze what is happening right, what is happening wrong, where the improvements can happen, and align themselves in order to complete the loop. What should the clinical researchers do? What you have already been doing, you have to share and distribute your knowledge through the research publications. And what should the pharmaceuticals and medtech players do? They have to incentivize. They have to motivate everyone to work towards building a better future by, benefiting, by utilizing whatever they are promoting. We slightly disagree in terms of who can benefit. It cannot be only patients. Yes, ultimately patients are getting benefited at the end of the tunnel, but there are also benefits that the other players in the ecosystem are getting. The health tech players, we have continuous access to data, evolution of our models and products. So usually for engineers, how it works is you keep giving them problems, they'll be happier because they have to innovate and come up with a lot of solutions, right? So I think by feeding them with a lot of information, feedback, and data, you're feeding, right into what they want. Clinical practitioners, updated evidence-based medical practice, and ultimately resulting in improved patient outcomes, which every clinician aims for, right? Clinical researchers, advancement of knowledge. I'm sure all of you would be happy if someone takes up your published paper and wants to conduct a secondary research based out of it, right? Am I right? So propulsion of research is the benefit that the clinical researchers get. It's something like, giving the data and giving the problems to the engineers. And adoption and promotion to the pharmaceutical and medtech players. Now, in the end, we just want to give a small glimpse of what is the role that OGCDS can play in this. We would like to do it in 3 chapters. The first is research to practice phase, where we have launched one of our product called Clinestra. What it does, it has evidence-based practice tools. It is a patient relationship management system which helps in the loop closure. The input is fed using the tools that we have provided. So Clinestra is a clinical data orchestration system, right? The second product that we have in the second chapter that we are trying to solve is practice to research. This is where the co-creation comes. The AI co-creation platform. This is where the data as a product is being created. This is where the care pathways are being built. This is where everyone has to step forward and contribute to creation of these pathways. That is our product called Astra, which is a clinician AI assistant, which has a lot of different tools that Dr. Meghnad has earlier explained, the different AI models, which can help in fulfilling all these responsibilities. The third chapter that we hope that we are able to solve is the research practice, the entire loop. Research monetization platform, tools for interventional research, and patient simulation engine. I'm sure it is going to help all the researchers a lot. So OGCDS is lying somewhere in between research producers and research consumers. So what we expect or what we request for is building, help us build a community of researchers who can help building these solutions. Help us by providing your validations and insights and feedback to make sure that the tools are right, they are really helping, they are really solving the problems. Thank you. So we'll be happy to answer any questions. Any questions, opinions, thoughts? Something where you want to mention that we are, wrong in our perception? What can we do better? Do you all believe that really this is a problem that is existent? The research, practice, research, the gap? And do you all believe that AI can really help in that? Great. It's good to know. Any questions, ma'am?
Just to answer that in 3 simple phases, right? So first and foremost is, how do you actually make it easier for people to consume research? Okay. Assume that there is a lot of research. Assume it is actually true. There is a lot of research that is already done and available on good journals, publications, and so on and so forth. But there is resistance, there is accessibility issues, and whatever we have discussed so far, where we can make it easier. Now, why ChatGPT is actually making so much of waves is it is easier to use, right? It is simple. It is very simple. You can talk to it like you're talking to a human being, and it still has a very good communication skills. Okay. So that kind of a simplicity, that kind of the accessibility, how do you bring it for consumption of research through these evidence-based practices, or how we give it in the regular EMR systems? Like, for example, we're working with a company to integrate our system with EMRs. So when doctors use EMRs, bring those guidelines, bring all of the drug interactions, or just that, simple, and keep it updated. Okay, that would be, I think, the first thing that has to be done. And the second piece of it would be, how do you enable the outcome-oriented approach? Okay, now and this is not something that we are trying to make up. There is a lot of systems that are there in other parts of the world where they use patient-reported outcomes or patient-reported experience. That means every doctor uses tools that after the patient leaves the clinic, there is a survey, there is a questionnaire, there is this very simple 1 or 2 question kind of a thing that goes to the patient, which will let them, at least even if 10% or 5% of them are able to answer that, they will get a good amount of feedback on whatever practice that they are doing. Let it be evidence-based, research-based, or out of their own intuition. How is it actually benefiting the patient? Okay, so that would be the second phase, where now the second phase for implementation, again, the main challenge would be, how are we making it simple for the patients to give that data? Okay, we all know patients are, or let's say just in general, not to hurt anyone's sentiments, human beings are very good with negative reviews. Agreed? If something is wrong, if the doctor did not speak to you well, you go instantly onto Google, search for the doctor, write a 1-star review and leave it. But very seldom people give 5-star reviews or anything. And platforms that are there out there, they are trying to judge these doctors by this rating system. We don't think that's fair. Okay, we don't think that is the way to do it. So plugging these both problems, AI can simplify just that conversational piece. Like how ChatGPT can talk to you, if we are able to deploy AI models that can talk to the patient and just take, did you have any of these side effects? Simple question. Did you have, how many days did it take for your problems to subside? Still a very valuable data. Okay. And the third phase would be in terms of, there is so much that is done by lot of doctors and researchers, right? There is no one single channel where all of this can come. Even if it comes, there needs to be some very powerful system that can make sense of all of this. If we have to understand, if there is the whole chain of, this is the observation, this is the hypothesis, this is the valid proven guideline, this is the implementation, and this is the outcome. If you have to implement and make all of this sense, that means there are trillion things that have to be looked at. I think that's where, again, at the third part, AI will make a lot of sense, closing the full loop. Yeah, so I think very, very good question. This is another misconception, I think, when we talk about AI models. We see them as it's a monster that requires tons and tons and barrels of data. We are at a stage where we have methodologies that do something called zero-shot training. That means you don't train it on anything, or few-shot training. That means you say, pick 10 patients, give a quality patient cohort study, and say this was the data that was collected. This is the different features that were tracked. Let it be weight, height, BMI, glucose, and this and that. And label or annotate what are the outcomes of these 10 patients. Current day generation AI models are capable enough to still get a very good understanding of what might be right with these 10 patients, what might have gone right, what is the hypothesis that is being tested, and what is the efficacy of that hypothesis. So but it is not true anymore that it requires large number of data. What I mean by we need AI to make a lot of sense is, data is not the problem here. We definitely have data. It's either not in the structure that can be consumed. It's either not reliable enough to be directly fed into the system. So in spite of that, how do we use it is where we were saying the current generation models that are there, large language models or multi-models. What they do is they are very good at interpreting huge chunks of data at a time. Not necessary that they need it, but if that's the use case, they can still do it. That's the, I think, difference. How much? Sorry, sir? Okay, so that would again dependent on, we have discussed multiple different kinds of models, right? So if we are working on something like epidemiological studies, where you need deep pattern analysis, there I think the amount of data that is required and the quality of that data is very, very, very important. Okay, when you are doing something like a rare case study, or case that has cropped up in one corner of the world, but everybody wants to still get reference from that, there you don't need much quality. Even if some bits and pieces of information are there, it can still make sense of it. And if you're going for something as large as simulating a patient, right, you want you want to see if this drug is given to this particular patient with this genomic sequence or this DNA, genetic parameters, how does that actually reflect and simulate that whole thing? There we are looking at data that has to be collected over 45 days, just check, collect, check, and so on. So it depends on different models. Again, there also, quality is very important, but it varies on a scale where it cannot be synthesized. It can be normal real world data, but some unstructured can be a very great example, right? When initially we used to refer to data quality, we used to mean it has to be properly structured in terms of blood glucose. This is the code for that. This is the number for that. This is the exact place where decimals have to be placed and so on. Now, there are systems where you even give blood glucose as 125 grams per deciliter and it will still be able to pick what is what, identify what is the code for blood glucose and so on. So just to give you an example with the context. Okay. So 2 points here. The first point would be lot of that has been presented is a hypothesis and a framework that we were seeking validation, like we told in the start of the presentation. And second thing is, this is not about one single model or one single methodology. Okay, why we more call it a platform or a framework than one single AI model? The reason is that based on what is the use case. Okay, when we say 3 to 5 years, if you take observational research as an example, okay, a simple thing like how is we all know that metformin causes weight gain. Okay, so if you have to establish that, okay, you need a kind of what do you call? You need a timeline of data, correct? You need to understand how much data is required, and once that is there, pushing that back into practice and giving insights to the doctor is very simple. You don't even need 3 years for that. Maybe 1 year for doing that observational study, half year for making sense of all of this and pushing it back into in a way where it is easily accessible. You can put it into practice. Okay, so we are not talking about one single methodology or one single AI model that has to be approved by FDA or something. We will have to seek approvals or FDA related validations for each of them separately. As of now, we are just beginning. Okay, let me just end on that point. Yes. So at the core of any AI model, there is aspect of machine learning that will be involved. Okay, and let me be very frank with you on this point. Lot of people who speak about AI, they are just meaning statistics. Okay, there is no magic there. It is pure statistics. You give it to a statistician, he will be able to do it way more accurately, way more better. Okay, and lot of AI models, again, they are just machine learning algorithms, regression algorithms, classification algorithms, nothing else. Okay, the pure form of AI, maybe we have just come across it in 1 or 2 places, nothing else. LLMs are a very good example. but nowhere it is. And the same goes for us also. When we talk about AI, what we mean by that is the entire framework that makes sense and keeps it together. Okay, but in many places we use machine learning algorithms. If you take something like, if we have to, I'll give you a small example. If you have to predict length of stay, okay, you have 1,000 patients. Okay, you know each one of them what they have been admitted for, and you have the data for how much is the admitted number of days they were in the hospital. Okay, I might tell you that this is AI, but it's a very simple algorithm that you can write in 10 minutes. Okay, so we use pieces of that. When we say AI, what we mean is, how does this all come together? There's some system that is making sense of all of this in one single blank point. That is the artificial intelligence, not the individual pieces of it.
We are in the not FDA directly. Yeah, we have, and eventually once we
I think Sir had a question. Thank you, sir.
thank you for all your patience.
If there are any more questions, we can still take it one-on-one, no problem. We'll be happy to.